Hey there everyone, my name is Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel, where you'll find some of the most fair and honest game reviews out here. Now today we're talking about a game that I'm pretty sure many of you out there probably never played before, Ex-Mutants for the SEGA Genesis. Whether this game is good or bad, well, we'll get to that. A funny thing about the 90s is how a lot of people who played video games were often into other things like comics. There was a lot of crossover between the two mediums. Some comic characters ended up getting video game tie-ins because they were so popular, like Batman, Spider-Man, the Avengers, or Superman for example. And then you had lesser known comics that were trying to get in on the action, which is the case here. Ex-Mutants is a SEGA Genesis game that was based on the characters and story from Malibu Comics. It was a company that gained some traction by publishing series like Ultra Force, Nightman, and the Men in Black. Yes, that Men in Black. Anyway, the game follows a team of humans that are reformed mutants in a post-nuclear war-torn Earth. They are humanity's last hope against the onslaught of mutants led by Lord Sluggo and his partner Zygote. You play as one of two ex-mutants named Aykroyd and Shannon. The two of them need to rescue their comrades and defeat Sluggo so the human race can be restored. This is a very 90s type of plot, which echoes a lot of similar things you saw back then. Those that read the comics might like seeing these characters in video game form, but everyone else might have a little trouble staying interested. So a couple things. The plot of this game I find to be very shallow, very surface level. Even though there's a lot of dialogue scenes and little kind of like blocks of text you're going to be reading in between stages, you're not getting something that's like super in-depth. It's not like you're getting the best type of plot for a video game in here. Some people might like it, especially if you read the comics from Malibu, but if you didn't, you're just going to be like, okay, fine, whatever, just keep things moving along to the gameplay. On top of that, one thing that also does bother me just a little bit is the fact that this is a story about a team of heroes, but you only get to play as two of them. I feel like games like this, especially if they're based around a team of like different characters with different abilities, you should be able to play as each one of those characters. In here, once you rescue your comrades, they only appear for like one little section of dialogue or one cutscene, and then you never hear from them again until the very end when you see the entire team together. To me, that's very disappointing because all these other characters seem like they got different abilities, and I would have loved to play as them throughout all the different levels you explore. But instead, you only get two, and it is kinda meh. That being said, let's talk about the gameplay because I feel like there's a little bit more in here to chew on with that, but don't expect anything too crazy good. To be totally honest, Ex-Mutants has some good ideas that are executed poorly. You could choose your character at the start and play as them for the entire game. While you do have different pickups and attacks for each character, there's little differences between them. Aykroyd uses a battle axe that could hurl daggers and smaller axes, while Shannon uses nunchucks and could throw shurikens and logs at enemies. Nothing more or less interesting about them. You traverse 11 stages filled with enemies and obstacles, with an occasional boss fight here and there. What can get annoying is how the game requires you to find a power cell item before exiting a stage. Without a map, you need to explore every corner in order to find it, otherwise the game forces you back to continue exploring. This wouldn't be that bad if you had a map to refer to for the places you've already checked. This is made even worse in later stages when enemies and obstacles get tougher and ramp up the cheapness factor.
Alright!
If there's one thing I can't stand in some games, it's the feeling of poorly designed mechanics and technical issues. Stuff like that can really ruin an experience. And that's exactly what I got after a few levels of Ex-Mutants, where things started to really feel banged up. Whether it's the poor hitboxes of enemies or cheap hazards that the game throws at you, you'll end up feeling the rage. Some enemies have these very awkward hitboxes when you attack them, as well as inconsistent strength every time they attack you. But by far, the one thing that ruins the entire game is the lack of hit invincibility. For anyone that doesn't know, hit invincibility is when your character gets hit and has a few seconds where they're invincible to other attacks, allowing you a chance to escape a real bad situation. You find this in almost every other platformer or action game, especially in the 16-bit era. But Ex-Mutants doesn't have this at all, which leaves you open to multiple attacks simultaneously. I constantly found myself getting demolished by smaller enemies and bosses that would crowd up the screen with multiple attacks. It felt incredibly cheap and unfair every single time. The final battle against Lugo has a real problem with this, causing what should be a very mediocre battle to become a broken struggle against some very poor design. Something else that I found very disappointing is that despite being able to choose between two different characters, you get the exact same ending by the time you finish the final battle. And to me, that's disappointing because you would think that in a game where you get to choose between two different alternating characters, you would have some sort of variation of it by the end. Like, I do understand you get like these different cutscenes and little different dialogue and portrait changes, but to me, that's not enough. I feel like it should have been more interesting to have like an entirely different ending or something that radically changes it by the time you finish that final battle. And like I mentioned earlier, like just the fact that you don't get to play as any of the other Ex-Mutants in here is also disappointing because that could have been also very interesting to see. But even then, on top of that, with the gameplay itself, choosing between Aykroyd and Shannon has no purpose. Like, each one doesn't get like their own unique abilities, like one can jump higher or one can do some sort of like other unique attack. You don't get any of that. It's just very basic, very surface level stuff here, and for even back then during that time frame on the SEGA Genesis, it's just very meh. So does this diet version of the X-Men bring enough to the table to be relevant? Can I recommend that you play Ex-Mutants on the SEGA Genesis? Absolutely not. I find this game to be straight up mediocre. I doubt anyone who hasn't read the comics this is based on will care about the plot at all, let alone any of the characters. I feel that the gameplay has a lot of problems that get worse the deeper you get into it, with a lackluster payoff by the end. If you want to play a 16-bit game based on a comic series, you have plenty of better options on the SEGA Genesis that are far more worth your time. What you get here is honestly a very mid and disappointing experience. And there you have it, everyone. Those are my thoughts about Ex-Mutants on the SEGA Genesis. This game is whack. This game is lame. Like, it's not that good. And it's disappointing because this is the same type of vibe like if you were playing like a Spawn game and it was just not that great. I mean, it's different from like the Marvel and DC stuff we see all the time. There's so many games about those characters, but there are other, like, you know, independent comics that also got, like, you know, their own video game adaptations, which are so much better, even during this era. Remember, like, Bloodsport? Anybody remember that? Or Bloodshot? Like, there's others out there that I'm pretty sure many of you could think of. Put it in the comments section and give us some better recommendations than this garbage right here. But regardless though, like any other game I review on this channel, that's just my opinion about Ex-Mutants. Let me know your own thoughts about this game down below in the comment section as well. Tell me, are you a big fan of independent comics? Do you like the Marvel and DC stuff that we always see? What are some of your favorite comic video games or comic video game characters out there that you love to see? It doesn't even need to be in the 16-bit era. Give me like a whole cavalcade of like good recommendations. Talk to me about that stuff down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I appreciate your support and I hope you enjoyed checking it out. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and don't forget to leave me a like on this video and post a comment down below too. It helps out the channel a ton. You could also join my Discord server via the link in the description box to come be part of the community we have there. Whether you agree or disagree with me, come chat about games with everybody in there. It's a lot of fun people that I know you'll get a kick out of. Hope to see you again soon. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.